Meghan Markle, poster child for space invading and over-the-top clingy behavior, has a rival for touchiest celebrity, most space invading. Recently, I discovered a celebrity who has a track record of being far too physical with people, far too clingy, far too touchy, hugging people she doesn't know, things like that, really getting into your bubble. And this is something that we know Meghan Markle really struggles with also. She consistently hugs people she doesn't know, creates an unprofessional vibe in a professional setting by being very touchy-feely and clingy and hugging people and hanging on them. She sends preteen vibes the way she hangs on her associates. Her constant need to touch Harry, whether he wants to or not, exudes insecurity into their every outing. Oftentimes people ask me if there's any other public figures, celebrities, famous people who make the same mistakes as Meghan Markle, who have just as many challenges as she does when it comes to her public image. Whether it's her etiquette challenges, her fashion fails, or her just general mistakes when it comes to PR. It's very difficult to find an example of another public figure or famous person who has just as many mistakes on their track record as Meghan, and Harry too, but as Meghan does, especially when it comes to things like fashion. Usually celebrities who are like actresses, actors, people in the music industry, all these sorts of people tend to really keep out of the spotlight as much as possible unless they're doing press tours and red carpet events and things like that. And when they are doing those things, they're managed by an entire team of people to make sure that they don't have those sorts of mistakes happen. And they rehearse and they practice and they take it very seriously because it's simply part of their contractual obligations. It's part of their career. They view it a little differently. It would seem that Meghan Markle views every single moment as an opportunity to communicate her ideas and her feelings and push her brand onto those of us who don't really care to have it thrust upon us, much like she does with her body, when she's constantly thrusting her body onto unsuspecting strangers at every turn. And so, after lots of digging, I have found one celebrity who does have a great example of making the same mistakes that Meghan does, almost as often as Meghan does. She's a lady who wears a messy suit, though she pulls it off a lot better than Meghan Markle because it's far less wrinkly and fits her body much better. And just like Meghan, suffers from a gross lack of self-control when it comes to invading people's space. Serial Space Invader Drew Barrymore has a talk show, if you didn't know. And it started out okay. It really did. People seemed to feel comfortable opening up to her. She was good at connecting to people and has a very unjudgmental sort of vibe about her that people responded well to. But now it has devolved into the most bizarre type of talk TV, unlike any other talk show we have seen, because Drew has a habit of invading every single guest's bubble in a way that comes across as predatory to many, and certainly exposes a gross double standard, leaving the guests wildly uncomfortable and the audience cringing but not able to look away from the train wreck. Hi everybody, I'm Beebs Kelley. Welcome back to another video. Please do consider subscribing if you have not already, and if you would like to, click the thumbs up button and leave a comment if you wish. Imagine if this were a dude, a guy of any sort. This would not have been put on TV. These sorts of clips would not find their way onto the television. It's almost impossible to imagine because it would be so wildly outlandish for something like that to actually be put on TV and make it to air. It just wouldn't happen. It would not have been allowed. They'd be like, we can't put this on TV. You'll be canceled. We'll all be canceled. This is not okay. If it were, though, in some alternate universe ever put on TV and it was a man acting this way, people would slam him as a host as being predatory, sleazy, lacking boundaries, inappropriate, all the things. And that dude would be canceled and banned so fast. People wouldn't have it. But with Drew, it's not only been allowed, but it's been encouraged by her show's producers, and things have definitely gone too far. Since Drew did have a much softer approach and successfully got her guests to open up to her and have open-hearted conversations, at first it was a situation where the producers and the showrunners were encouraging her to keep it up, continue to take it further, see how much you can get out of them, make them as comfortable as possible. The big sister chat sort of a vibe is what they were going for and encouraging Drew to do in every episode. To create as close and as intimate of a conversation as possible. And boy, did she take that and run, far and fast. She regularly does things that do cross boundaries of general established social norms. To be clear, the majority of Drew's guests are people who she is not friends with in real life. It's not like she's having just her homies on TV. These are other people in celebrity culture, famous people, notable figures, actors, actresses. Like she's like a normal daytime talk show is having just general celebrities come on. And they do so because they have a project to promote, or they're going to be in a movie coming up, or there's something newsworthy happening in their lives that they are on the show to discuss and or promote. Like, that is the whole point, just like every other talk TV show. But these are not people who Drew has a long-standing personal relationship with most of the time. Of course, she's had some people who she knows personally on TV or on her show, but in general, it's not. And so all of this is very much not appropriate for somebody whom you do not know. She regularly does things like hold hands with guests, sit so close they're almost intertwined or atop of one another, makes faces like these that many read as seductive. And it's not just a situation of taste, like this is Drew's style and it might not be for everybody. It's not that. This goes beyond that and has strayed into a very different arena. It's difficult to see these sorts of things and ignore just how abnormal this behavior is, just from a social perspective. Also, you have to think about the dynamic here at play. Drew is the star, the host of this show. There would be no Drew Barrymore show if it weren't for Drew Barrymore. She is the celebrity of the show. And so she has that power element that this is her space, her territory, and things will go the way she wants. That's always kind of just there in the background when you're on anybody's show. You come onto their show, you're expected to play by their rules, so to speak. There may be certain things that you can or cannot say on various networks, for example, and so you have to filter your language. That's just one very brief example to all the many rules that people do kind of follow and the unwritten code of following the host's lead, because it is indeed the host's show. And as I said, this didn't start this out of the ordinary. This didn't start this bad. It started rather innocuously as Drew just being unjudgmental, a little bit easier for some celebrities to talk to, and having a little bit more of that sort of casual vibe. And this did successfully set her apart from other daytime talk TV situations where sometimes there's more than one host, so you're talking to a whole group of people, or things are a little bit less intimate or a little bit less personal. So there was an element to Drew's approach initially that did have value in it because it did set her apart. But now things are completely different and have gone way, way too far. Apart from being very strange and highlighting the double standard here, it also lacks professionalism and that dynamic of social norms. A friendly experience, a more casual approach does have its appeal. Sure, and of course it did in the beginning of her show, as we said. But now we're at a point where it's overshadowing everything and it's become the whole brand. The substance of the interview is never the most important thing anymore. And as the host, Drew looks to leverage her position into creating these moments that are not appropriate and infringing on the guest's personal space, personal boundaries, and potentially putting them in very uncomfortable positions at times. It also glamorizes a lack of boundary to viewers. which is more serious, allowing someone to infringe upon your personal and physical boundaries, or even just your principles of what you are and are not comfortable with in this sort of a professional setting that's going to be on TV. It sets a really bad example. People may become vulnerable to unwanted contact or attention simply because they see this example being normalized on Drew's show. Young and impressionable people might view this and think that this is an appropriate way for a grown woman to behave and might put people in compromising or even dangerous situations at times. So it's not exactly a safe or appropriate example to be pushing out on the airwaves anyway. But back to that power dynamic as well, this being Drew's show, she is able to leverage her position as host into sort of creating a dynamic where guests aren't necessarily comfortable with being like, I don't want to hold hands. This is being filmed, it's being broadcast. And anytime something is on camera, people very much do freeze when there's an uncomfortable situation or something that they're not necessarily okay with or don't necessarily want to deal with or be involved in. Then they oftentimes feel like they can't really get out of it when on camera without looking rude. So they find some sort of a way to go along with it and be polite anyway, even though they don't like it. And it's clear that several guests have had that same sort of a feeling with the Drew show and with their experience with Drew as the host, that they were sort of blocked in to this uncomfortable space that they didn't necessarily want to be in. With Drew and her show devolving into this very strange space of bubble invasion, it has been at the encouragement and request of the producers that initially they erroneously thought that this was a good idea and pushed it to higher and higher levels of intensity over time. But we also see this type of pattern happen with another serial space invader whom we know very, very well, and that is Meghan Markle. With Meghan and her bubble invading, it's a situation where she's meeting people for the first time, often in a professional capacity, and thrusting herself upon them for really, really close, extended hugs when greeting them for the first time ever, rather than a handshake. Now, she claims she's a hugger, and that's just her thing, and she tries really hard to push this as her thing. But when you are in adult life, in adult situations, oftentimes in professional capacities where you're at schools or charities or meeting vice presidents of places, things like that, then you are expected to behave in a more respectful sort of manner, where you respect the other people's boundaries, and a handshake is the perfect professional greeting. It's the perfect greeting even in non-professional situations because it allows both people to meet each other and greet each other without the pressure of physical contact, without that sort of dynamic that can make other people uncomfortable. It can take you off guard, it can be surprising, it can be too much, it can be overwhelming. You never know what somebody's been through, so it can be a big deal for some. But beyond that, it's also just a little too intense. It's a little too forward, and not in the sense of, well, I'm a hugger, and if you're not, then you're just cold and empty. No. The real root of the problem is that it doesn't fit the level of familiarity, and therefore it is a toxic choice because it starts creating this impression of closeness that is not there. Therefore, a fake rapport, and this is a manipulation tactic. So while I'm not 100% sure that Drew Barrymore's approach is rooted in manipulation, although it may very well be, just not necessarily of her own awareness. It might be the producers manipulating the situation because they think it's going to make better TV or viral moments. But with Meghan, the pattern has shown it to be a much more manipulative approach and reasoning behind this hugger image and the space invading that she tends to do. She tried to use this as a tactic to make the royal family seem cold and unfriendly and unwelcoming to her. But we have uncovered all of the lies behind that sort of false narrative she was trying to push. And since she was trying to use that, then it made all of her over-the-top, clingy, huggy behaviors seem fake and just for show to try to back this image up and label herself as the hugger type. And once again, same story here. When we see it on camera, it's clear that the other people have a moment of discomfort and then comply with the hug coming at their face from the Meg, because what else are you going to do besides seem rude and reject the hug on camera? People genuinely don't know how to stop these sorts of things from happening. Obviously, in an emergency situation, the best thing to do is just thrust your hand out before they get to you to make it clear you'd prefer a handshake. At the same time, it is okay to voice that you prefer a handshake to somebody in real life, even if you worry it's going to make you seem rude. It won't. It's the other people who are being too intense by trying to thrust their body onto yours for a hug when you don't even know them. When somebody is a stranger, it's completely normal to have a boundary there of not wanting a hug from someone you do not know or are meeting for the first time. Meghan and Harry trying to push this hugger image as part of their identity is irresponsible in the same way that Drew's is by trying to glamorize this lack of boundary. Like, for example, these pictures that we saw when Meghan attended this launch party with this woman. It's intense what's happening here. There's so many examples of Meghan bursting people's bubbles and getting into their space, whether they really want it or not. And when you have pictures like this circulate, it doesn't make you look like the girlfriend, supportive woman sort of vibe. It makes you look like you're too intense. You're too clingy. You can't keep your hands to yourself. We all learned about this in kindergarten, and there's good reason for it. You should keep your hands to yourself. But leave it in the comments what you think about this space invading approach, the bubble bursting, boundary busting ways of Meghan and Drew and a handful of other public figures that seem to lack that social awareness and don't communicate respect for other people's boundaries and social norms. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Have a happy day, everybody. Bye.